start my heart as much as you. Let's take each other's hand as we jump into the final frontier.
52 degrees at 7:34. That is the theme to TV's Mad About You and your KDES morning show with Bob O'Brien. My treat to talk to Paul Reiser, who this morning is an early riser and coming to town. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Coming to town soon, February 8th, the McCallum Theater.
Yes, beautiful McCallum Theater. I'll be performing with Rita Rudner. The two of us get to tell some jokes to the lovely people of Palm Desert.
We have a couple of things in common. This is actually the third time we're talking in a year, and you won't ever remember this, and I don't expect you to, but we were both at the George Carlin birthday tribute at the Comedy and Magic Shop in May. You performed there. It was you and Gary Shandling, and I got to meet you after your performance. That was great. Great fun. Great tribute.
That was a fun night, yeah.
One other interesting thing, we're both in Behind the Candelabra.
Is that right?
I'm just an extra. You have an actual speaking role in the movie.
Oh, did it when you shot it out in the desert?
We shot it out. All the scenes at the church.
Oh, really?
I'm an extra.
Cool.
You have a lot more scenes than I.
Well, I look forward to seeing you. Did you wave?
I'm right behind Matt Damon in a lot of scenes. So.
Oh, well, you know what? You ever watch a movie and you see some extra do something that you know the director's pulling his hair out, and you can't change it, and you see, why is that guy smoking? Or you see a guy pretending to have a conversation with the other guy in the background, but they're both talking at the same time. You're going, okay, they're full of baloney. That's not...
Well, that would be me. So
yeah,
the guy doing that's definitely me.
It's not easy. It's not easy to be a good background artiste, as they're called.
Now, you do so many things. You write music. You've also written a book called Familyhood.
Yeah, that's actually my third book. I wrote a book called Couplehood, which was just about meeting my bride, and then when we had a baby, we called another book called Babyhood, and so I wrote a book 15 years later. This was just last year. And I said, we got to come up with another name. She said, no, we're going to stick with the Hoods. We like the Hoods. I said, well, Familyhood, and then my last book will be Deathhood. I got to work on that.
It's Paul Reiser in the Hood, and we're talking with Paul Reiser this morning on 98.5 KDES, and he's coming to town, McCallum Theater, on February the 8th.
You know, with my parents growing up, I remember they would have friends when I was like in high school. Suddenly they were reconnecting with friends that they hadn't seen in 15, 20 years or so. Or the friends would be around more often. I go, who are these people? I go, well, they're our really close friends. I said, close? I never heard of them. And they said, well, we were both busy raising families. And I never could understand that. You know, the idea that, you mean friends just go away? And they don't really go away, but you do. You get busy, and then suddenly kids grow up and move out of the house. You go, okay, where was I?
You pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and I say in the introduction to that book, I wanted to write the book before too much time passed and we lose the connection. It was a different kind of book. It was a very funny book, but it was a little more introspective. You know, as it's what happens. You get a little older and you have kids and you think about things in a little bit different way. And one of the nice things, I got to be honest, one of the things that getting back to doing stand-up has been a similar thing. I hadn't really performed stand-up in years, about 20 years. Mad About You started, and I kind of went off the road, and then I was kind of comfortable and happy and didn't feel like traveling. I wasn't really doing stand-up even in town. And then I just kind of got the bug for it, and I went up on stage right here and down in Hermosa Beach, where you mentioned. And
oh, yeah, the George Carlin tribute.
I said, oh, man, this is fun.
I just again. You got the itch again.
I didn't realize what I had been missing. I said, I really like doing it. So I was going down for about a year. I was just going down a couple of times a week in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And it's only been the last, 5-6 months I've been going out now on the road and performing, and I'm just having the time of my life. I'm loving it. And with Rita, it's great fun. And, somebody had the idea of like, well, why don't we put Paul and Rita on the same show? And I said, well, I wouldn't have thought of that, but yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And she's a terrific performer and she's very sophisticated, and her audience is very smart and sophisticated. There's something we've done just once so far, but we have a couple of dates planned together.
More with Paul Reiser in minutes. Part 2 of our interview coming up on 98.5 KDES. Good morning. On this Wednesday morning, this hump day morning, 7:50, 10 before 8 o'clock, 53 degrees, high in the middle 70s, some rain in the forecast, and cooler temperatures as we head towards the weekend on 98.5 KDES. We were talking to him earlier. This is part 2 of our little chat with Paul Reiser, coming to town soon. That's the McCallum Theater, and always some great entertainment there. Rita Rudner and Paul Reiser all team together. Rita comes to town quite often, but Paul Reiser, we haven't seen him around here in a while. He's Paul Reiser, coming to the McCallum on February the 8th with Rita Rudner. And speaking of stand-up, going back several years, what was it like being on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and doing stand-up?
You know, at the time, every comic, that's what you dream of. And I'm sure comics today dream of, you know, still going on Leno or Letterman or Jimmy Kimmel, whatever, but I don't think it's the same. Johnny Carson was so the gold standard in a way that Letterman and Leno will admit, you know, themselves. It's like, yeah, it was different. You wanted that approval. So the first time I did it, I was, I don't know, 25 or 6 or something, and it was just when Diner came out, and so I had a little bit of an extra little boost because I had like an actual movie that I was sort of promoting. And
what a great movie it was!
Yeah, it was a great movie, but it was still going out there and getting that okay sign from Johnny meant the world. And I remember to my parents, who had no idea what it meant for a kid to go into comedy and, you know, what kind of crazy way to make a living is that. But that was the confirmation for them. And they went, oh, well, listen, Johnny seemed to like you, so you must be okay. So it served a lot of purposes, professionally and personally.
And getting back to Diner, I have to ask you a question. Mathis or Sinatra?
There you go. You know what? It's a tough one. Presley. I'm going to say Presley.
There you go. He's funny man Paul Reiser, and I have to ask you about your first big series, My Two Dads. Were you to make that show nowadays, it would have a whole different meaning, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't be in it if you made it now. It would be too younger guys.
We didn't think of it that way.
Well, yeah, people make jokes. Like, it was, it wasn't meant in any way to be real. It was a very silly, idea. Just, hey, let's just take an odd couple and throw a kid in there. It was very much a high, sort of a high concept show. It's like two disparate guys, and they both have to raise a kid. And people always say, well, why didn't they just find out? Well, because then we'd have no show. The whole show is predicated on not finding out who the real dad is. You could settle it. That was an interesting thing because there was a show that wasn't particularly my taste and my sensibility, but a lot of people enjoyed it. But what it did for me is it helped me learn how to be on a TV show and what it takes and what it is I wanted to do. So that shortly afterwards, when they said, well, would you like to develop a show? And I said, well, if I was going to do a show, I'd really, I know what I want to do. And that's what Mad About You came out of. And it really came out of my stand-up. I was already married, yeah. But I was recently married. But it sort of came out of my stand-up, which was seemed to be, suddenly my strength sort of seemed to be about talking about relationships and stuff. I've always, my brain is kind of drawn to that. And so the experience of the first show really helped me create the second show.
And you also wrote the theme for Mad About You. Is there anything you can't do?
Oh, there's so many things I can't do. I'm going to give you a list. That was a real kick. I got to write that song with Don Was, who's a legendary producer of Stones and Dylan, and he was one of those crazy Hollywood stories. About 2 weeks before Mad About You went on the air, I bumped into him in an airport, and I didn't know him, but I was traveling with Helen Hunt, actually, who we were going to do some publicity, and she knew him. And he said, well, what did you do for the theme song? I said, well, we don't really have one that we like. And he said, well, let's go write one. Come on, you and me will go write one. I went, well, okay. The next thing I know, he puts a session together, and he brings in the great musicians, and Jim Keltner on the drums, and we did it. And I said, well, I guess that's how show business works sometimes. You can have the best plans, and then funny things happen.
Opportunity was knocking.
Exactly.
And how about all the great people that worked on the show? Mel Brooks, Jerry Lewis, Carol Burnett, Carol O'Connor, and the list goes on.
That was really among the many blessings, to be honest, on that show. And Helen Hunt and I would often look at each other and go, do you believe it? I remember specifically we had one point where Carol O'Connor played Helen's father, and Carol Burnett was playing her mom. We did this scene where in an RV, and the joke was that her parents were retiring and going to go cross country in the RV, and her dad wanted to do it, and the mother hated it. But anyway, so we're in this the joke was how small and tight it was, and we're in this tight little table, cramped in there with Carol, and we're doing this comedy. We're watching them, and they're geniuses, and we would just look at each other and go, do you believe this? We're sitting, we grew up in our living rooms was Carol Burnett and Carol O'Connor, and here we are getting to play with them, and Mel Brooks and Jerry Lewis. Are you kidding me? It was really some great memories.
162 episodes of Mad About You, by the way.
Is that what it was? something like that. Yeah,
a lot of them.
Many episodes. We got to 7 years, and we got out. We got to end it when we wanted to, and before we started repeating ourselves or hating each other. We were 7 really strong years, and I think some of our best shows were in our last year, and that's always a good measure.
Plus, you got to kiss Helen Hunt on the show.
You know what? That worked out pretty good. She's doing pretty good. Yeah, she's great. Her new movie, and she's up for an Academy Award.
Again?
Well deserved. Yeah, she's terrific in it.
Good for her.
Yeah.
She was just in town recently. Now, you're coming to town again. That is February the 8th. It's Rita Rudner. It's Paul Reiser at the McCallum Theater. I guess tickets are still available.
You betcha. Come on down and say hello.
He's funny man Paul Reiser on 98.5 KDES.
Finally, 2013 is here.